Joining us now, Fox News contributor and former Utah Congressman Jason Chaffetz and pollster and strategic communications expert Lee Carter. Jason, you ran oversight. You know the boondoggle, we've talked about it, that was USAID. And to suggest that basically busting corruption, and there were people charged criminally with bribery and fraud, that busting that starves what 4.5 million children is just, well, deserves to get sued over.
Yeah, Congressman Khanna is not protected under the speech and debate clause as if he were speaking on the floor. He's doing an interview like that. He runs the risk, even though Elon Musk is clearly a public figure, to suggest that thousands upon thousands of people died and that it was murder is just, it pales beyond comparison. And there's pretty much an endless funnel of legal fees that he could bury the congressman under. And in this case, I think it's warranted because there is nothing to suggest in our Constitution or anything else that there is a legal obligation to continue to fund these countries with USAID and to do the type of yeoman's oversight work and get in there and see the fraud that was going on under USAID and others. I mean, we should be doing more Doge, not less Doge, and the congressman is totally wrong.
Lee, the trillionaire and the billionaires of America have been getting a lot of heat lately from the left, and I kind of see this as Elon Musk saying, wait a sec, we're not going to just take this. We're going to fight back. If these guys are going to say crazy things, then we're going to take them to court, and they're going to answer for it. Do you think that's a smart move with voters who are trying to decide what they think about wealth in America and the wealth divide and all these issues that the left want to bring up?
Well, I think it is time that people fight back with some of this useless rhetoric. Words are weapons, and you say things like he's responsible for the deaths of 4.5 million children. That creates an environment that's really, really more hostile, where people feel that violence is justified. When you look at the polling, when you look at all of the things that have happened and how people view the ultra wealthy, the successful, the CEOs, 40% of young people will look at it and say it's okay to perform an act of violence against someone you disagree with. And this is the kind of thing that leads to that. So there has to be a stop to it. And I think that Elon Musk is right to push back. There's always been these sort of ebbs and flows. We sort of let people walk all over us until we don't. And I think he's smart to point this out. I think it's the right strategy for sure.
I'm going to shut up because I'm going to curse, because that's just so insane. Moving on. Tomorrow's primary races, speaking of insane, in New York present a major test for New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani as he aims to push a new wave of socialist candidates into Congress.
With a fascist in the White House, with a climate denier in the White House, we are sending people to we need to send people to Congress in this moment. You will stand up against the war machine. You will take on the billionaires.
I've been very clear that I think all deportation is wrong on principle. It is a form of punishment that only people who were not born in this country are subjected to, and that is inherently something that creates inequality in our society.
We've got a fascist in the White House, we've got rogue ICE agents in our streets, and we've got billionaires trying to buy our elections.
What do you think, Jason?
Billionaires buying elections. They need to look in the mirror on that one. Look at the George Soroses of the world. Give me a break. But look, it's the value of the content of your communication to suggest that there should be no border, that we should get rid of ICE, that everybody has a right to be here equally. No, I'm sorry, but that's not enshrined in the law anywhere. They are illegal aliens. And if you're here illegally, you got the restitution that you do is you have to leave the country. And if you have to do so forcibly because ICE needs to take you down, that's the job and the role that they have. So they paint a pretty picture and do have a lot of glossiness trying to attract people. But the practicality of their policies fundamentally don't work top to bottom.
Oh, Daria Liza doesn't even want illegal aliens who've committed crimes here deported.
Right.
But go ahead.
Lee, is the left winning America's blue cities and losing the rest of the country here?
Well, I think it's a really interesting question because on its face, you would think so. On its face, you look at this and think, I can't believe that the party is going this far left, that socialism is winning. But here is what's happening right now. 75% of Americans right now believe that our system is broken, that the way that we've been doing things isn't working, that the system is fundamentally unfair. Donald Trump has his version of talking about that, and Mamdani has his own way of talking about it. And you're seeing the people are repeating back his message right to you. Billionaires are buying elections. Billionaires are all unfair. We have to have more equality. Things aren't right. And it's working because the problem isn't that people are gravitating towards socialism. They're saying the way things are does not work for me, and I want someone who's going to break it and fight back. And that's the message that's resonating. And I think Republicans need to be really careful not to fight against socialism, but rather say, we're willing to break the system too for you in order to give you more opportunities in different ways. It's not just about talking about how the far left is crazy. It's about saying, what are we going to do to be the fighter that's going to fight for the American people and the American dream? And I think that is where we really need to be focused. And I am concerned about the move to the left, but I think that's really what's underneath it all.
Brian's making a face.
No, I'm thinking. I always make faces when Lee talks because I'm thinking. They're my thinking faces, Lee. And you too sometimes, Jason, as well.
Good to see both of you.
Thank you, guys.